All right, so I've got a video feed going on Instagram Live, and this video will be posted to YouTube. The topic is going to be preparation for the CrossFit Open, and we're going to talk specifically about program design for one of our CrossFit athletes, Audrey. As you can see here, and for those watching on Instagram Live, it's just listening. This is Audrey's first week of her kind of final push for the CrossFit Open. Now, I'm just going to take it one day at a time, explain what we're emphasizing, what we're de-emphasizing, and talk about how we're managing her fatigue, which with this proximity to the open is super important. We don't want to risk any lingering aches and pains, and if they come up, we want to make sure that it's such that the program is proactively going to help take care of that fatigue, because the fatigue, especially with how much we're pushing intensity in Metcon, will accumulate so much faster than she can express her fitness. So hopefully that made sense to people watching on Instagram. But again, it's just going to be taking this one step at a time, exercise by exercise, and just kind of popping the hood on Audrey's program. So on Tuesday, Audrey rests on Monday. Our athletes don't have fixed rest days. It's totally what works for their schedule. And just saying that because I think a lot of times coaches try to force athletes to have a program fit their schedule and not have it be as it should, which is to have the athlete's schedule be conducive to consistent and good programming that matches their energy levels and that matches their time per session. Energy levels meaning the time that they might have within a given week based on their work or life schedules. Hopefully that makes sense. So Audrey has some specific snatch work at the beginning of the week that's very light, and it addresses some very technical things that she's been working on. The technique has come incredibly far already, but just some fine tuning. It's at 50%. This skill work will not come with any fatigue accumulation. It's going to be something that she can certainly recover from. At the start of this cycle, we have sets of 5 every 60 seconds, as you can see here on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, touch and go style weightlifting, specific to how it would appear in touch and go style CrossFit or sport of fitness. So we have here, and this is week 1 of the cycle. Now with week 1, we want to allow for Audrey to build momentum. We don't want to come out of the gate too fast, but we've acknowledged that this is kind of her last push. The overall RPE of the week might be harder, or higher rather, than the RPE of a week 1 in a setting that isn't trying to prep her for competition, albeit before a taper that will need to dissipate fatigue so she can express her fitness when it matters most in the open. So you're going to see, as written in these notes here, that the weight, because it is week 1, she has no reference point for this, at least in recent past, to match the strength gains that she's had and the skill gains that she's had, so to speak, in weightlifting. So the note is challenging weight that allows for unbroken reps per set, but err on the conservative side. Now, other athletes have gone through this cycle, and I've let her know here, other strength ratio athletes, SR athletes, have begun with about 60% of their max. And that's held consistent for the power snatch, power jerk, and power clean. So we are pushing to the fore the touch and go style, and we are holding back the Olympic lifts as they are featured like from the floor, 1RM as a weightlifter would have be their ultimate goal for competition. Now, 1RMs are featured in the open, but the frequency and because she's been training the 1RM from the floor in previous cycles, is just not as important at the moment. But I'll show you how we do keep around the skill because she's certainly strong enough to hit PRs. We're keeping around the skill so that when as fatigue drops, she can express a PR potentially, or a high percentage relative to max with strong efficiency, if say that 1 rep max snatch or clean jerk comes at the end of a workout. So going into her strength, 4 by 5 to 6 reps, RPE 8.5. So if you're not used to RPE, it's a way for us to make sure that our athletes are improving their awareness around their effort, that it is challenging but not absolutely maximal. And this is going to be important for long-term health, that we're not pushing towards anything that would create a loss of position, potentially risking injury, but that with some proximity to failure. And you see here that 8.5 RPE is defined as having definitely 1 in the tank, a chance at 2. The athlete's able to get strength adaptations. But again, it's not risky. We never want it to be risky. That's not just with proximity to the open, but we write for all of our strength athletes, all of our athletes, to have both their strength and hypertrophy work featuring RPE. That RPE looks a little bit different for the cardio when we don't want it to be a max effort session. And I'll explain what that means and what that looks like later on. No questions from Instagram, so I'm going to keep rolling. We want to select repeat workouts that Audrey can test that involve areas that she wants to work on, or areas that she needs to work on, that we've kind of spoken about together. And that's much more beneficial than choosing old open workouts, haphazardly. You want to see improvements where the improvements needed. And for a lot of our athletes who've spent time developing their engine throughout the year, you're really going to see that engine hopefully reveal itself, but that more importantly, you're seeing improvements in the skill where it's needed, so that really there aren't any holes in the game when it comes to gymnastics or weightlifting skill. Great. So that's day 1. That's how long this kind of YouTube video is going to be, because we're going to take our time, or at least I will take my time with every day. Now, you see session RPE, as I scroll down a little bit, she has listed as a 7 to an 8. So I explained what an 8.5 would be for, say, her back squat. It's defined there too. You'll even see that it says here to adjust load to match the RPE as needed. So let's say Audrey hit 210 by 6 and she had like 2 reps in the tank for sure, maybe even 3, she would adjust it. But you see this little video here, this video icon, I can click on that, a little plug for True Coach, and then it takes me to her history of that, and I can just watch the video. So if I click here, I can see her back squat, and I also agree that that was an 8.5. So Audrey, very good at sticking to your RPE, but that idea of being able to add weight if she's good, but then also adjusting weight as needed is what we call auto-regulation. It's just another mechanism that we can use, or not mechanism, but another tool that we can use to make sure that the stress is appropriate for what we want on that day. So that's different than the session RPE. The session RPE is that when I write this workout, I have an intensity effect in mind, I have a difficulty effect in mind, and based on what you can see with the strength, 8.5, that's quite challenging. You're leaving just 1 in the tank, maybe 2. We're getting into some touch and go power reps, or touch and go power snatch reps. We haven't done a whole lot of heavier reps at lighter volumes doing that. So that's a novel stress, even though we're erring on the conservative side. And we're repeating a CrossFit open workout. I'm expecting anywhere from a session RPE of 7 to 9. And she says 7 to 8. So I know that what she's perceiving is exactly in line with what I want to see. So now we can finally go to Tuesday. Still good over here. No questions yet on Instagram. We don't need them because I'm just kind of like full throttle here. I've got a lot of notes that I want to hit, but if you're watching this, you're probably someone who's a CrossFitter, or you program for people who CrossFit, and this can benefit you, hopefully, or potentially. If it does, let us know. If you have any feedback too, let us know as well. So going to the power jerk, you'll see the notes were they were copy and pasted. We want to begin conservatively in week 1, and I want to make sure that we allow room to grow. So the next week, it's 5 sets of 4 of the power snatch, power jerk, power clean. The weight's coming up a little bit, but we still get a good intensity response with shorter rest. You'll see it's every 60 seconds. Okay, so there's some conditioning response to this. We have, as you see in part B here, accessory work, but relative to the amount of accessory work that Audrey does in her off season, this is bare bones. So this is the minimum volume that she needs to keep mass in areas that she needs to be strong for CrossFit specific skills, but it's not training the CrossFit specific skill directly. And what I mean by that is that you need a really strong back for butterfly pull-ups and for muscle-ups and so many other things. So an accessory exercise for the back is an inverse row. Now, in the off season, we do a lot of supportive accessory work. It's not highly sports specific, but it is supportive. But because we are in a close proximity to the open, this type of accessory work is just the maintenance work needed for her to not lose those gains. If anything, it might be the minimum that she needs to effectively make progress, but we're not pushing it high. With so much to get into one cycle of training, one microcycle of training for a CrossFit athlete, you just can't be hitting everything all at once. It has to be in line with their needs analysis. It also has to be in line with the proximity to competition and what that competition will ask of them, which is not inverse rows and bench press, but we still have some in. This workout here, I knew would take longer. I wanted something that was upper body, something that was going to challenge muscular endurance. If done correctly also, Audrey would be able to challenge her handstand push-ups in a way that would require high efficiency, meaning high skill and having kind of like expressed her skill refinement with rowing and double unders. Both are high skill exercises. Arguably the rowing much less than the double under. For someone as proficient as Audrey, with someone who's as fit and I should say well practiced, with someone of her training age, the double under shouldn't be an issue. It's just there to almost act as like something that can create fatigue if done wrong, but when done right, you'll just keep the heart rate elevated, and you're also going to make sure that she can work on her transition time of exercises that often have or can potentially slow an athlete down. Sometimes people trip when getting in and out of the rope. So with as many transitions as this workout has, I wanted to make sure that she was kind of sharply moving from station to station. And as for the row, when we row incorrectly, we use too much of our elbow flexors. We don't use our legs, which are the primary movers of rowing. If we row correctly, we will have energy for the double unders and for the handstand push-ups. And if you look at this total volume, what is that? That's going to be 30 plus 25 plus 20 plus 15. So that's 90 handstand. Sorry about the dings here. Those are just athletes' messages coming in. That's 90 handstand push-ups, and that's not a number that was chosen haphazardly. It's a number that I know that she can recover from, even when there's the distraction and fatigue of other movements. It's also a number that we've kind of built up to over time. So I'm not just picking these reps and sets haphazardly. Of course, when you get into the open, the reps and sets are not something you can predict, but you just want to make sure that the volume per exercise is not just an out of the blue, like acute, really traumatic, really excessive bout of that exercise relative to what the athlete's experienced in the past. So hopefully that makes sense. So day 3 of training, Thursday, power clean. It's IBID everything in her jerk and in her snatch. Now, Um, Again, wherever you see videos here, that means that, and this is how True Coach works, some of our athletes are video here exclusively. Other athletes send us messages via text. But Audrey has her videos. I can go in and we can talk about technique. I can leave comments about technique, and I do, to make sure that she is refining her barbell cycling skill. Audrey's just joined Instagram Live. Audrey, this is your program that we're talking about. Hip thrust, 2 sets, RPE 7. RPE 7, she knows that that's going to be 3 reps in the tank. That's usually where we begin a cycle, or we're involving some muscular hypertrophy. Audrey's very strong in her legs, her glutes, and her back. You can see that 285. Some of our males are nowhere near that for RPE 7. She's a really strong chick. And that's going to, again, as accessory work, non-specific CrossFit skill. It's not the highlight, but it's something we have in there just to make sure that there's good fatigue management. So for instance, that's not another squat session because we did a ton of squats on Monday, and I still want the legs to be fresh for wall balls on Saturday. This is the mental thing about, and by mental, I don't mean like psychologically mental, but like mental isn't crazy. Thing about programming for CrossFitters when it's done well is that you have to manage fatigue on such a high level. The minutia really does matter, especially if people have a history of joints that can, well, not a history of, but joints that historically don't recover as better as others. We want to make sure that we're really being careful of fatigue management of those joints. So if I put a hip thrust in a dumbbell stiff leg deadlift, yes, it's accessory work that can keep mass in those areas, such as the glutes and the hamstrings. But if I put a midweek session squat there, she's not going to be feeling good for her wall balls on Saturday. And again, this is not something that you can just like give to an athlete and expect to know off the bat. This is the significance of individualized programming, is that over time the program gets better because the coach better understands, at least hopefully a trained coach who understands their foundational principles, because that's nothing crazy. That's nothing that other well-practiced coaches and experienced coaches aren't doing as well. But they have to consider fatigue management on a high level with CrossFitters. It can sneak up on you in many ways with the lifting and the when I say lifting, like the weightlifting and the powerlifting type exercises that we use for strength training or for strength development, as well as the Metcon. Now, this day overall was meant to regulate fatigue as a greater session RPE. It's a lighter day, really. You'll see her session RPE score was 5. So on Tuesday, we had a session RPE score of 7 to 8. On Wednesday, we had a session RPE score of 8, which is quite high. Between 7 to 10, I'm like, okay, we're getting some push. This is effective for what we're trying to accomplish. If we get scores between like 4 and 6, I know we're doing a good job at monitoring fatigue and working on skill and other areas that aren't going to come with a high a recovery cost, so that we can then pick up the intensity in other areas in the week. Chronically having intensities high throughout the week in general, meaning like if you're feeling beat to crap and you look back on your week and your session RPE is 9 for everything and you're hurting, you don't have to go see your maybe allied healthcare professional to say why I'm feeling bad. A really good allied healthcare professional, such as John Gillum, who we just had on the podcast, such as those at Clinical Athlete, they're going to first try to look at your program, and then they can help you resolve these areas of fatigue or of pain with really good coaching. That's where rehab and programming or performance kind of exist on this same spectrum. So we've had an RPE 5. We have had a rest day on Friday. Now I know that I can give Audrey a good intensity dose response on Saturday. Audrey, I don't know if you've looked at this yet, but you'll at least hear it here. So snatch and split jerk are, again, it's kind of maintenance work. 75% for Audrey is a weight that's not going to create too much fatigue in these particular lifts because of where her technique is, meaning that we've worked so hard on her weightlifting technique so that when she does it correctly, the bar is where it needs to be. It's going to be involving the muscles that we need in the receiving positions and in the pull positions in the snatch and clean that are consistent in the muscles that we're using, so that there isn't unnecessary fatigue. What I mean by that is if you have someone with poor technique, they need to be working largely with lighter loads, because if they're working with higher loads primarily and they don't have the skill, their body's going to experience that stress in ways that you might not want. Meaning, like, it might be in the joints if the jerks are caught forward, or if the snatches are caught awkwardly, or if the pull postures are yanky. It's not going to be favorable for the hips and the back. That takes a toll that you don't want it to take. Whereas I know that she can recover from this kind of work here while maintaining her weightlifting 1RM specific skill. Not trying to max it right now, but just holding it in maintenance. This last part here is a block front squat. We've been using partials for her because it's great for using. It's great for building absolute strength when performed in conjunction with full range of motion training. So the back squats on Monday were full range of motion back squats. The block front squats are to her sticking point. So you'll see the notes here. RPE 7.5. Pretty good place to start out a strength cycle. I tell her here that the rep cadence will slow slightly on the last rep. Block front squats. Audrey has not done this yet, so we do want to err on the conservative side, but it's going to be a great exercise to build upper back strength in the squat, as well as like sticking point specific strength. Part D, again, accessory work held at maintenance volumes, before part E, which is featuring, and this is the first time I've done this for Audrey, I'm featuring another open workout because we have to get muscle ups in. That's an area that we've been working on a lot. I'm adjusting. So 15.3 is a 14-minute AMRAP. I think I have that right. I'm adjusting the volume down relative to her best scores so that it's not going to be the same volume that it could be otherwise if I gave it to her flat out. And I know that I'm going to regulate that intensity so that it's still a good intensity bout. It involves a skill, the ring muscle up for higher volumes, which we need to work on. And I say here, and this is something where if you're watching and you're one of our athletes, we'll be doing more of this. I click here, or I tell her to click Part F's cardio RPE chart as a reminder. So our Facebook pages have this posted. They know that they can look there, but I thought, why not just put it in the program? So if she clicks on the cardio RPE chart, she's going to see this photo. So this photo here, I don't know if I can zoom in on it, but perhaps you can. Is a chart that we actually have at our gym on site in Asheville. We got this from Complete Human Performance, which is Alex Fiata's company. And this is going to help Audrey better gauge with a little bit more objectivity, such as the breathing rate, the talk test, and the recommended duration that she could potentially keep that at, to help inform her as for its intensity. As for the heart rate zone, that doesn't really work for a CrossFit athlete. There are just too many confounding variables that will influence heart rate during a Metcon. Just so you know, heart rate during Metcon, we just don't have the technology for that to be at all an effective tool. Maybe in the future, but there's just too many things that will sway it to where you look at your heart rate and you're like, oh, I burned 700 calories in this 9-minute AMRAP. You didn't. The technology is not supposed to be, or at least the way that the technology is now, not at all efficacious for a Metcon. And going to this last day, Audrey almost snuck a peek at next week's program. We have, and this reminds me that I have to type in the session RPE for this day. But I'm expecting the session RPE for Saturday to actually be moderate to high, more towards moderate. And I'm expecting Sunday to be even lower. Clean is maintenance technique work. And then we have just a low, slow, steady state. LIS stands for low intensity steady state. I didn't even reference the RPE chart because Audrey knows what that means. That means that it's a conversational pace. We also get to practice skill in low intensity sessions. Handstand walk is a great exercise that I can have her practice in this lower intensity state, especially because in the next week I have handstand walks in a higher intensity state. I just want to make sure that she's not going to muscular failure here, as she could potentially in the EMOM. Hopefully not. There are notes for how she can adjust that, but you'll see here it says partition is needed to focus on good technique and avoid muscular failure. That'd be in the shoulders during the handstand walk. Again, low intensity, steady state. We don't want a lot of fatigue to accumulate with that. We want to just allow for recovery. We wanted to allow for a psychological break from the previous week or from this past week, and psychological preparation for the week to come, because that following Tuesday is going to be really hard. She'll have come off of a light day, this Sunday workout, come off of a rest day, and she knows about what to expect. She knows how the program has evolved. She's likely going to see heavier power snatches. She's going to see back squats again, and she's going to see another CrossFit Open workout. That CrossFit Open workout on Tuesday is, the training environment's not what it would be during the Open, but she is trying to improve on past scores. So I know that it's going to take her to that place. And that's an important part about preparing for the CrossFit Open. We've discussed here increasing the frequency, or at least you can see here, increasing frequency of CrossFit Open specific exercises. We've spoken about skill pertaining to CrossFit Open specific exercises. And lastly, we've spoken about how, well, actually, what I haven't spoken about yet is how, because the CrossFit Open does require an athlete to kind of go to that place, you have to be ready for that. And you have to know that that will come at the greatest recovery cost, psychologically and physically, meaning that Audrey doesn't usually have this light of an end of the week. But because Tuesday, I want her to go to that place, and because Wednesday is another hard session, but then the week gets a little bit easier, however you want to think of that, it's getting easier, she can leave it on the line in a similar way that she'll need to during the Open. I was also thinking that having this 2 rounds of another Open workout can kind of get her, and what I'll continue to do, in the mindset of like focusing on something Open specific, but having her prepare for potential repeats in the Open. That's kind of what I'm getting at there. That's all for today. Hopefully you enjoyed whichever platform you tuned in on. Let us know if this is at all helpful for you. And yep, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us here, share with people the good word, and any and all feedback would be hugely appreciated. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.